All right, guys. Debate here: milled optics or MOS system directly from Glock. Which one is better? We'll go over the MOS one real quick. If you don't know already, Glock makes an MOS system where you basically have this first plate system where they are interchangeable. You screw this onto the Glock slide, and then you can mount your optic or your next plate system if your optic comes with a plate system, and it goes like that. And then you have a combination of plates, sometimes one plate. There's some aftermarket plate systems, and it's a pretty low cut here, so a couple of them are beneficial. There's one Holosun SCS, if I'm not mistaken, that is a direct mount optic, which is really cool, super low. You can co-witness with your factory height sights. The issue is it does not adjust. You cannot be adjusting your brightness on that optic, and that does cause issues for somebody who likes to be a little bit more accurate shooting. You end up with a lot of bloom. Uh, Getting your slide cut directly. I sent mine out to, I believe it's called WagerWorks, not JagerWorks, but with a W, basically, WAGER, and they did a slide cut for an excellent deal in an incredible amount of time, and they have the option of moving your sights in front of your optic and moving it back. I actually like this because I want to protect the optic from getting hit by anything and getting scratched. I'd like it to be a little bit farther away because I don't like scratched glass very much. But this one, basically, they just cut the exact size for the optic that I needed and screwed holes directly into the optic and gave me screws with it. This seems better on paper because you're going to be like, oh, well, I can go just buy one gun and choose my optic later, or change my optic as I get different preferences, or upgrade my optic as I get nicer ones. And that's a great thought. That's kind of what I did with it, was I'll just be able to change out things constantly, and I can just change it out and I'll enjoy the multiple options or whatever. But the truth is, nothing has mounted correctly at all. The only thing that did work was that Holosun SCS direct mount optic. The SCS MOS version was fantastic. It mounted excellent. It matches the slide serration, so it's actually really cool. I do have one on my mom's gun because she does not need to shoot accurately. She has a gun that is just, if I need this, I'll use this kind of a gun. So it works for her. She doesn't notice that it's blooming super bright or anything like that. But I just couldn't stand the not adjust ability. It was only affected by sunlight or light around you, and you couldn't fix it and turn it down if it was wrong. And that made it very tough. But it did fit right. Everything else hasn't worked. For example, here, as you can see that this first plate is mounted, and then there's a second plate on top of it. This is what you need to do when you run something with the Holosun's K footprint, or the RMRC or whatever, the smaller one. It requires one plate to go to RMR, and then one plate to go from RMR to EPS. That is not fun, for one, as you're like, well, I don't want a whole bunch of plates, that's weird. It's weird, and it's problematic. So I have had issues where, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see it, but there's actually a crack right here. There's a gap in between those plates. What that is the screw hole. The screw went through the plate and then pushed on the slide and actually bent the plates up. So when you look at the thickness of these, you can definitely see that there is not enough threads in any thread pitch that are realistically something that you want to hold on to. And that's exactly right. When you're having to use these double stacked plate systems, it's definitely an issue on screws. Even running this single plate and running an RMR screw through it, you got to understand this plate is the only thing that the RMR screw is sticking inside of. Like, literally, I don't know if that's maybe an 1/8 or a 1/16 of an inch. It's not a lot. I am not a fan of it. I've had plates break. I've had screws rust in plates and actually break off, which was just terrible. I had one of the aftermarket plates. I tried the aftermarket plate from the Glock store, which was a direct EPS options, which would go from MOS to that. The screws were too long. They didn't hold the plate down tight, and then the screws that went from the optic to the plate seized into the plate, and I had to actually drill it out and then cut my optic off, and basically the Glock store didn't care. So, as you can imagine where this is going, I'm basically telling you not to get MOS unless for some reason you're going to get the direct mount SCS Holosun. That's pretty much the only time I'd recommend that. I am a absolute huge fan of direct mount. It's kind of obvious. Just cut the right a room and put the optic on and put screws in it and have the screws go nice and deep into the metal. They don't go too deep. They're not hitting the plunger. As long as you have a good company do it and you use screws of the proper size, you're not going to have any issues. Make sure you're not driving your screws down into your plunger chamber. But it's just so much nicer. On this size, I can use the stock sights. They are like lower fifth. They're not lower third. They're not co-witness. They're super, super low, so you'd only barely be able to use them. But that's exactly how I like irons anyway. I don't want them in the view of this. You could put suppressor height sights and you could get lower third with kind of higher, and then you could get absolute co-witness, obviously, with full-size suppressor height sights. But this direct milled is definitely the way to go. Get a regular Glock, get it milled. It does stink to send it out. I I felt weird about it too, but it's definitely worth it. I would recommend it extremely over running multiple plates on top of this goofy MOS system. I do think this was a fail on Glock's part, honestly, and I think I think they should come out with, you can just buy the slide with what you need, so it can actually fit, because you can see big gaps in between the plates compared to like this fitting perfectly, or just have the recommendation on where they think you should send it out and get it milled and get it done right. I'm a big fan of Glock, but I'm not a fan of the MOS system. Go mill your slide, get it done right.